Subscribe, like, comment and share to support the channel. Thank you for the support.
Nox begins to question someone about how they were concerned about the price of a precious medicine when someone was dying right now. The question seems to be pointed towards a doctor who nervously told Nox that that wasn't it. He tells Nox that if he doesn't have the permission from the Patriarch to use the medicine then he couldn't use it. Nox understood the doctor's concern regarding the Patriarch as it was revealed that G-Tree was laying on the bed with a life-threatening wound. He then questions the doctor who was called Rodwell about whether he believes that his position was higher ranked than his was in the family. Hearing that question made Rodwell simply apologize to Nox. He then tells him to give the medicine to G-Tree and that he would report it to his father personally. Rodwell understood the request and went on to administer the medicine right away. As he gave the medicine to G-Tree, Rona asked him about whether G-Tree would be okay right now. He told her that the poison had now been neutralized and that she would be alright. Rona was glad to hear that, but soon noticed that Nox was leaving the room, which made her question why. As she looked at him leave, Nox informed her to report to him personally the moment G-Tree awakened. The scene then changes to the biggest badass boy in the family, the Patriarch, who noted to Nox that it was rare for him to come look for him. He questions Nox if he was here because of the maid that he had. Nox appears before the alpha male with a stern look on his face while kneeling. He lets out a deep breath before activated the skill called Master Zero Acting. Nox pointed out to the Patriarch that he had remembered that he would grant him one wish of his, just one thing. He hears this and agrees with Nox. Nox then requests from the Patriarch to give him G-Tree de Lovelia, the one who had been exiled from her family, but the Patriarch didn't give an immediate response to Nox's request as he showed a look of sadness on his face. Nox then recounted that there would be a butterfly effect that would influence the main story, and even though she was Theo's spy, all that kind of problems no longer mattered to him anymore, due to the events of today, where he saw her trying to save him. It was at that moment that he realized something. The answer that she didn't tell him previously, and the fact that G-Tree showed it with her actions. Theo soon answers back to Nox's request, telling him that he understood and that if that was what he wanted, then he would make it happen. Hearing that his request was granted, Nox stood up to leave, but before he did, he told his father that his unworthy son had just one more thing to tell him. Theo then tells him to speak, and Nox then warns Theo that even if he were his father, the efficacy of his master of acting is dropping because of his agitated state. But our boy doesn't care as he continues to threaten Theo, telling him to please stop toying with his people with a murderous look on his face. The scene then changes again to where we left off previously, where Nox caught G-Tree in the hallways when she was trying to run away from him due to guilt. Her entire body trembles as she tells Nox that she was about to leave as she longer thinks that there was any place for her here anymore. Her hands continued to tremble as she held onto her suitcase while thanking Nox for everything that he had done for her. But Nox didn't care about her words as he questions her once again, asking G-Tree about where she was going instead of assisting him as his maid should. Her face was filled with a dark expression as she tells Nox that he already knew the answer. This was when she reveals to Nox that she ordered by the Patriarch to survey him, which includes deceiving him as well. She then yells at Nox for trying to hold her back, shouting at him that she had deceived him all along. Tears began to flow down her face as she continues to tell Nox that she didn't have anything to say to him if he were to chase her out right now. But our boy simply wore a smile on his face as he wonders if this was what G-Tree was like behind her acting, as he felt that this side of her feels a lot more like a living person. This side was one where she would choose not to give up and struggle even though times might be dark and tough. Nox then tells her that people deceive each other a lot to begin with, which alarms her. His reply causes G-Tree to have another outburst, shouting at him that she had committed a grave offense against him, but Nox tells her that that was precisely why. He informs her that, after committing a grave offense against him, why would she leave without repaying him for it? And questions her about who said she could leave. Hearing those questions stuns G-Tree, as she couldn't understand them. Nox reminds her that all he needed were the talents that she has. As he walks by her, he whispers into her ear, "I want you to assist me by my side until you pay back for the offense of deceiving me. As my maid, I play the K-drama music in the background because our boy's Riz just caught her heart." G-Tree then began to cry once more as tears started to flow down her face once again. She told him that she understood and informed Nox that she would stay by his side until the end and assist him. Nox gave out a smile as he told her that it was good to hear that, but before he leaves her, G-Tree asks him if he recalls that he had asked her previously about who she serves. Nox tells her that he did. She then asks him if he wanted to know who it is now. Nox says yes, as he knew it now. The scene then changes to Rona talking about how Nox was threatening the doctor, telling the doctor that he was going to kill him. Her face was filled with joy as she talked about the incident with the doctor, but Nox appeared by her side, telling her to refrain from insulting him right in front of his face. Rona was alarmed to see him and wondered if he was listening to everything that she said. Hearing that reply made Nox annoyed, as it meant that she was no longer trying to weasel her way out of insulting him. Rona then spots Jitri carrying the laundry, which makes her wonder if she is feeling better now, as she warns Jitri not to overwork herself. Rona then decides that she is going to do the laundry instead, and she rushes out of the room to escape from Nox, telling him that she is going to dry the laundry. Nox scratches his head and wonders why Rona was always causing trouble. He then turns his attention to Jitri, questioning her about whether she knew that he will be going to Eldine Academy together with him in 2 months' time. She informs him that she does and had already made quite a bit of preparations for that. Nox was then curious about the preparations she made. Jitri informs him that she had gathered things like basic tools that he will need, things such as books, medicine, emergency items, clothes and cadet uniforms for external trips. She continues to explain to Nox, but his thoughts started to wander. He noted that Jitri no longer forces herself to smile in front of him. A flashback is seen where Jitri tells him that she was tiring of acting as she was no good at it anyways. Nox was glad to see this side of her, as he was more comfortable with her being like this, because they don't have to give unnecessary compliments to each other or engage in meaningless small talk. But in a situation where they were driven into a corner, even when their backs were facing each other, they wouldn't betray one another. Knowing about this made Nox smile as he realized that this was good enough for him in his relationship with her. As Nox read his books, Jitri asks him if he was really alright. She informs him that there have been some negative rumors about him spreading recently. Nox got off his chair after hearing the news from her, wondering why it wasn't about an already existing rumor. He noted that it was pretty impressive that there can be worse rumors than the existing ones. This was when Jitri tells Nox that the rumor was about how they say that the reason he was still hiring her as his maid was because he likes her. Hearing the rumor makes our boy falter as his hand nearly slips off the chair. Nox didn't feel anything, but the original MC couldn't believe that he was feeling the sense of shame for playing the role of Nox. Nox then apologizes to Jitri for being caught up in the rumor because of him, but she tells him that that was not why she told him about it. Jitri noted that she was thinking that he might be uncomfortable because of such rumors, but Nox reminds her not to worry about him as she must have heard about the previous rumors. He reminded her that he was the good-for-nothing idiotic and incompetent youngest son of the family. Jitri avoided eye contact with Nox as she tells him that those rumors weren't that bad, but he reminds her that he would fire her if she lies. She then immediately changes her answer, telling Nox that she did hear about those rumors, and on top of those rumors, she had heard that he was also perverted, which made her question Nox if that rumor was true. He buries his head in shame, but thought about how his image was actually better now as he recalls being previously called a reckless good-for-nothing despite being weak, but nowadays he was just a brat who acts up even though he's pretty capable, but he knew that he still needed to strike a balance. Nox was a villain in the end, so he needed to remain as a villain in order to help the protagonist shine, because he was not the protagonist of Inner Lunatic. Nox decides to wave off the rumors and tells Jitri that they should stop talking about it. He then informs her that he had a task for her. He reminds her that in order to survive in Eldine Academy, she won't be the only one who needs to prepare, as Nox himself needed to be prepared as well. Jitri then questions him about what preparations he was talking about. Nox recalls about Jitri's single-minded trait, which refers to how she absolutely trusts a certain person. He smirks knowing that it wouldn't be an issue even if he shares a little bit of his plans with her. In fact, he needed her to know more about him so that it will be easier for Nox to get her to do things. This was when Nox reveals to her that he was intending to study magic before he joins the academy and that he wanted her to help him with that. Hearing his request was shocking to Jitri as she looked at him with a horrified look on her face. She questions Nox about whether he was going that despite knowing that it's illegal in the Empire. Nox replies with of course, as he was a good-for-nothing. After all, he was also a lustful one at that. Jitri couldn't believe that he was acting so brazen. She then tells him that she was sure that he had a reason for making such decisions and informs Nox that she would be looking for basic books that would be of help to him. Nox looks at her with a smile as she left, knowing that she was competent as expected, but a bunch of voices started to shout outside his window, telling one another to move and get prepared quickly. Nox hears this and wonders what the ruckus was about. He heads over to the balcony as another voice shouted out loud that they would all be in trouble if they messed up the preparations. It was then that it was revealed that young Master Grain has returned. Nox was surprised to hear the name Grain as he remembers that he was coming back after graduating from Eldine Academy. Various carriages were moving below from where Nox stood. He noted that he had almost forgotten about such an important event. He smiles as he knew that this was the chance to extend his life was finally here. He then calls out to Jitri once again, informing her that he would need to go on a faraway mission for the time being. Jitri could only wonder what else Nox was up to now as he whistles happily as more carriages appeared in the estate. Theo was seen sipping a glass of wine at the dinner table, telling Grain that he had done a good job on graduating from Eldine. Grain von Reinharber was seated at the table as well and thanked his father for the compliment. This was Theo's second son and one of Nox's older brothers. Nox then decides to take a peek at his older brother's stats as the window started to appear. It is revealed that Grain was 16 years old whose main element was dark. His had the active skill called precise detection. Seeing his list of traits made Nox realize that his older brother was a lustful man who brightens up upon seeing materialistic women and an opportunist. He knew that the only reason why Grain's true colors hadn't been exposed was because Nox was a worse good-for-nothing. He also knew that Grain was someone who was very good at getting along with others in the world of politics. He had used his talents in playing politics to easily graduate from the academy. Eldine was very famous but also very hard to graduate from. In its admission exams, less than 1,000 people would pass and only half among those who were admitted would graduate. Theo then asks Grain about whether the date for his departure to Chaders has been decided. This question alone was enough to stop him from moving as he froze while holding his spoon. He informs his father that he will be departing to the south for Chaders in 3 days' time. Theo informs him that if he was going there at this time of the year, then it would mean that it was going to be during the monster hunting mission. Chaders was a little outside the Reinharber territory, a neutral territory of the south, and it was also on the borders with Tajalin in the east, which uses an undeveloped desert as its borders. Not only is it barren, it's also swarming with monsters, so it was the worst kind of wasteland. The mission that Grain received from the Imperial family would be to stop the monster wave in Chaders, because the fate of the Arkheim Empire is that one must complete the first mission given to them by the Empire in order for them to become a knight that was recognized by the Imperial family. Grain reveals that when winter comes, Chaders will always be filled with monsters after all, and it seems like the Imperial family wants to take some initial measures against the monsters. Theo cuts in to tell him that while the land is barren, other areas will also suffer if that place falls. He then warns Grain that, in any case, he should not bring any shame to the Reinharber name. Grain replies back that he would bear that in mind. Nox continued to eat the food in front of him, knowing that this Chaders mission wasn't just a simple monster hunting one. It didn't just end as a sub-story. It was also involved in several complicated storylines, and so he knew that there was a lot to gain from it. He then asks his brother if he is going to Chaders and wonders if he could bring Nox along with him. Nox knew that he had to participate in the Chaders subjugation himself to gain the benefits. Hearing his request was alarming for both Grain and Theo. Grain then questioned Nox about whether he knew what kind of place Chaders was. Nox reveals that he had heard that it was a neutral area where monsters would attack suddenly on an intermittent basis and also one where bandits are secretly increasing their forces. Hearing his reply made Grain note that he had been hearing a lot about Nox recently. He questions Nox on whether it was true that he had cleared the missing child's forest together with the second daughter of the Stillrainers. Nox replies that it was true as he thought about how his older brother's skill called precise detection. It was a skill that figures out why someone is restless and if his target's stats are lower than his. Then he will be able to find out the reason for it quickly. Simply put it, it was the skill that made him into the expert of living in the world and playing politics. Hearing that the rumor of the missing child forest was true made Grain wonder if it was also true that Nox had defeated the twins and taken in a commoner maid. Nox continues to tell Grain that it was all true as his skill steal mentality had been activated to counteract precise detection. Grain understood that Nox had accomplished a lot of great feats recently, but noted that he couldn't let him, someone who hasn't even been admitted to Eldine Academy, come along with him on this mission, as he would prefer not to have to be the one to collect his corpse. But Theo tells him to wait. He stands up from his chair, and informs Grain that he believed that he can be the one to guarantee that that won't be happening, and thus he informs Grain to bring along his brother on the mission with him. Grain shouted with outburst to Theo, but he looks back at him with a bombastic side-eye, telling him that his was an order. He then shifts his gaze towards Nox, informing him that their family will be providing the necessary supplies for the mission, then tells the boys to make the necessary preparations for the departure in the next 3 days. As soon as he left, Nox wondered about what just happened as Theo had given him permission so easily like that. As he left the room, Nox continues to wonder about what Theo was up to something. The same question was then asked to Nox as a Grain appears behind him, asking Nox if he had really lost his mind. Nox replies that no matter how crazy he was, How could he be crazier than what he used to be? Hearing that kind of reply made Grain angry as he shouts at Nox for daring to joke around. He then grabs onto Nox's collar tightly, warning him to better watch himself. He warns Nox that it would be a pity if he really got injured after getting the rare chance to go to Chaders. But a voice suddenly screams out loud with "Oh my!" As a bottle of wine was tossed from someone's hand, Nox turned around to see who it was, and it was revealed to be G-Tree, who somehow tripped and spilled the bottle of wine around them.
Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.